Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here to talk about Root Letter. I'd show you gameplay, but according to the PR email I got with my review code for this, they said something along the lines of all Let's Play gameplay will be taken down because of the nature of the game, which, to be fair, makes perfect sense, so I figured I would just have to do this in the sort of audio style that I've done a few times before. I can't stop this chair from creaking because if I move even a little bit, it creaks. So, I'm sorry about that. So, Root Letter is a visual novel, obviously. It's one of the, well, not really that obvious when you think about it, but at the same time, yeah, if you look at this game for even more than a few seconds, you'll know it's a visual novel. And it's, I wonder how to describe it. It's a sort of investigative visual novel. It does more than just read the story and make a decision every now and again. There's a couple of things that you have to do to actively get involved with it. So every now and again you'll be able to like move to different areas, and the different areas will have different characters, and you ask different characters about different things. You can check the environment around you for specific things. You can use an inventory of items. You can think, which not only doubles as a way to advance the plot, but also as a way to remind you what you're doing if you've forgotten what you're supposed to be doing at that point, which is nice if you have to put it down for a little bit. There's a guidebook that lets you see some like locations and some details and stuff like that, because apparently this entire game is based around a real world city and some of the people in it are actually real people, which is an interesting thing considering the subject matter, but we'll hopefully get into at least some of that later on. I can't promise that I won't spoil anything. I'll probably be talking about how the gameplay mechanics work later on and how they are different things like that, but I won't be spoiling the story outright for the most part. Then, of course, you've got your phone, which lets you save and load, and you can use it to skip chapters once you finish the game once, which is really good because it's actually really neat. It's nice to be able to skip those chapters just without having to play through them all again. But it's also a pain in the ass, because if you're going for specific endings, the only chapter you can't skip is Chapter 8, and Chapter 8 takes like 15 minutes to go through. And considering the game's got like 5 endings, yeah, not the best thing in the world, but there you go. There are a couple of errors with the localization, just while my mind's on it. There's a few misplaced periods, there was one sentence I think that I saw that went off the side of the screen and didn't wrap back around. PQ do that in a lot of their games for some reason. And there's just a couple of things like that. Otherwise, it's like 99.9% fine, don't worry about it. The VA is actually alright, but the thing is, in the options menu, there's an option to turn the text speed way up. And if you turn it way up, you will be able to get through the game really, really fast. Like, my first time through Root Letter was about 6 to 7 hours long, and it takes about the same amount of time to get through the other endings as well. The way the game works with the chapter structure is that you've got the first 8 chapters, and then the 2 chapters afterwards are all the different routes, and you can go into 5 different things there. Well, actually 3, but then you finish the game and you unlock 2 more. So that's an interesting way of doing things. It reminds me a lot of Steins Gate, actually. In fact, a lot of the game reminds me about Steins Gate. It's all based around a real place. You've got characters that are supposed to have things like, brain work with me here, brain work with me here. You've got characters that are, they try to diversify and give personality traits and stuff like that. And it's all based on real stuff and all that. It's an interesting approach. What the hell was that noise? It was an interesting approach, nonetheless. The question, though, is that the pacing is a lot weirder in this game as well. Like, you can spend an absolute ton of time just looking around, looking for something to do, and when you are actually, like, on the main plot, stuff might not get done for a while. Although, it does keep the pace up if you turn the text speed up and just blast through it, like I did. Because that is actually a good idea. Because if you've got the text speed on max and you don't mind not listening to the voice acting, oh man, you can get through this game so fast. It's ridiculous. But there you go. But yeah, the pacing, as I was saying, isn't particularly great. The way the chapters work is that you spend the first few bits of the chapter, like anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how well you can figure everything out, going to different places, talking to different people, asking them questions. And you can find items in the world, and then you get these inventory items, and then you can, you think on it, obviously, to try and get some of the answers. And then eventually, when you need to find out information from someone, the main idea of the game is figuring out who the 7 people are, who are your pen pals buddies, because the main whole plot of the thing is finding your pen pal from like 15 years ago. Sorry, not 25, 15. And the idea is that once you've collected enough evidence in order to figure out that they're actually the person they say they are, which is an interesting way well, it's not an interesting way of going about things because they've been doing it for a while. But yeah, once you've gotten all that, it goes into an investigation mode where you've got all the same stuff, but you've got basically limited lives to do it. But the whole game is actually really easy, and I mean, not really easy in the sense that, it's an absolute cakewalk. It's not. But at the same time, it doesn't hide anything from you. You get everything you need before you go into an investigation period. There's no red herrings or anything like that. You do carry around a few extra items, but if you try to give them to the person in the investigation mode when you can't give them that item at all in that investigation mode, it doesn't cost you a life. And you get 6 lives, you get 5 attempts, and then the 6th one will put you right back to the start of the investigation mode. So you don't lose that much time at all. The answers never change or anything like that, so you can just go right through. It's a relatively easy game, is what I'm trying to say, and it's kind of nice, actually. I mean, everything it does makes sense. There isn't any, really stupid puzzles like in Danganronpa, where you have to come up with the idea that you can put a bunch of rocks into a girl's swimsuit to hit someone over the head with it. Yeah, I don't know who came up with that puzzle, but they need to go to drug rehab. But yeah, that's an interesting way of... It's an interesting way of doing things because it's rather lightweight in that sense. It doesn't really put that much effort or onus onto you, and it's more like you do get to watch what's going on, more or less, but at the same time, you do need to put in a little effort, and you can figure it out purely by brute force. So that's entirely possible, but at the same time, if you're even paying remote attention to the story, you're not going to have a problem with it in the slightest, which is alright. There's a bunch of different characters in the game, and they've all got their own little personality and quirks and stuff like that, and it's neat. It's this really, after playing a game like, say, Danganronpa or Steins Gate or Zero Escape, playing something like Root Letter kind of brings me back down to earth a bit, because the entire thing is based around being realistic, more or less, at least until it gets to the endings, but we'll get onto them fairly soon, but I'll put up a spoiler warning before I actually start talking about that. No massive spoilers intended, just so you know. Yeah, so it's rather down to earth about everything. You need to eat every single day, and you go to the same restaurant every day, and you get to know the 2 people there. There's a bunch of different areas with a bunch of different people you can run into. You do end up talking to the wife of one of the characters at one point, and they're all relatively realistic characters, and it's more relaxing than anything else. It's kind of helped by the fact that they did a really good job with the art design in this game. Like, the art in this game is really good, especially the background art. I wouldn't be surprised if it was photos they took and then touched them up, because it's just a really nice looking background pretty much any time you look at it. It's a shame though, because they have an absolute ton of locations and most of them only get used once, which is, unfortunate, but there you go. And the characters are also a bit weird. They've all got their own individual nicknames, and the funny thing is the nickname of one is Bitch. And the thing is they rarely ever call her by her actual name. So they refer to her as Bitch every single time, even when they're like children in flashbacks and stuff like that. And it's actually kind of silly. Like, imagine going up to a bunch of people and referring to someone as Bitch constantly. Like, in fact, the main character of this game actually does that really early on. And the funny thing is, he actually says, "I don't understand women," when she gets upset about it. And I'm like, why? Why? Are you an idiot? The guy is a bit of a blank slate. It actually took me a while to figure out that you're actually playing as a guy in this game, because they don't really tell you. I mean, they might have. I might have been just something I missed in the first couple of paragraphs. But yeah, it's he's a very blank slatey character. And he does some other weird things as well. Like, there's this thing called Max Mode. It's funny. his nickname is Max in no matter what you do, right? But you actually get the opportunity to put in a custom name, and the funny thing is, I put in my name, which is Blue Maxima, and so when it said Max, I started to get kind of worried, but nevertheless, it was my imagination. And there's this whole Max mode thing going on in the investigations where there's this 4-level circle that's slowly building up, and you have to press X on the right thing in order to say it, and it's kind of implicated as one of his personality traits, where he goes into his max mode in order to find the right thing to say, and they do kind of screw with it later on, but it's weird. Instead of just, like, you know, doing something, they just make you find the right thing to press X on, and max mode is actually kind of hard to figure out, because you need to press X on the right statement, and the right statement isn't always immediately obvious. It's the same thing with the questions, really, that you can ask, but then again, most of them are written out in such a way that they're obvious what they will do, so not the worst thing in the world, and max mode doesn't take any lives off the investigation period either, which is, again, a little bit strange, but, you know, I'll roll with it, I'll let it go. So, there's a thing that happens every single time that, every single chapter, I should say, you read a letter, and when you read the letter, it gives you the first clue about who you need to talk to for that chapter, and then you get to pick how you responded to said letter, and depending on how you answer those questions, that's what determines what endings you get. And trust me, this is entirely obvious. Like, this is not a spoiler in the slightest. It's even mentioned in the manual. That's basically how it works. So yeah, when they mention it in the manual, it's not a spoiler. It really isn't a spoiler, but yeah. So there, as I said before, your first run through of this game is actually going to be pretty short. It's 6 hours long, and trust me, they give you like 1 million save slots, but they're all useless. Like, after you pick the first choice, it's pretty much worthless, because it depends on how many choices you make on a specific thing, and obviously you can't go back and do that, but at the same time, when you do finish the game, as I said before, you can skip to the end of a chapter, and you can go into the next chapter, respond to that letter, then skip again, and you can do that over and over again if you need to. So yeah, it doesn't take very long to get all the endings if you absolutely need to, like, save time. Took me about 10 hours. I did it all in one night, so it wasn't the hardest thing in the world to do, I gotta say. And it's just a bit weird. Like, the 5 endings in this game aren't actually that satisfying. It's just because they're all really short, and the way the story beforehand is set up is that it doesn't really give you any particular hints onto what's going on with the main plot. And there is one true ending. There's one ending that's kind of subpar ending. It's like the normal ending, but it's not really the normal ending. It's the ending I got first, because of course. And then there are 3 endings that are just so out of place in the game's realistic tone that it kind of feels like the equivalent of gag reels in BlazBlue, where they just go completely off the damn wall with how stupid it can get. And, I mean, to be fair, I'm not entirely against stupid things like that. When they were playing up the entire game as being, a whole serious sort of thing, finding those 3 endings was just weird. Really weird. I'm not entirely sure what they were going for there. And, oh Christ, I forgot what I was gonna say. God damn it. And, oh no, I remember now. So, and the thing about this is that since there's 5 different endings, and depending on what you do through chapters 1 through 8, which is a full, like, 4/5 of the game at that point, it needs to hint that all of these potential endings exist in order for the story to make sense. And it does that by implying that every single ending can happen, and it's really, really strange. They do actually do a good job with the actual mystery by leaving all the clues you need to figure it out along the way, and while you might not know what's going on before they actually explain it to you, if you do know, like, the right words, which I'm not going to say out loud to keep spoilers from happening, if you do know the right words that they refer to in the story, you will be able to at least have some kind of guess as to what's going on. And the whole mystery itself does remain pretty interesting throughout. It starts off really slowly, like the first couple of chapters aren't great until they start implying that some other shit might be going on. And that, oh great. And that makes it a lot more interesting. It gets a lot better after the first couple of chapters, yeah. So the characters themselves are fun to talk to for the first couple of times, and then you just keep coming back to the same ones over and over again. It does kind of get annoying after a while, but you know, it's not that bad, really. It's just a bit strange. And it says that people represented in the game are actually real people, and the problem is you can't tell who's meant to be based off a real person, who's entirely fake, and it's very weird. But there you go. So overall, it's an interesting game, and it kept me engaged for the majority of it. It doesn't really do anything particularly unique, I guess is what the word I'm looking for is. What's there is actually pretty well crafted. It's well written. The characters are interesting. The whole mystery that's got going on in the background is interesting. And if you get one of the gag reel endings, and trust me, if you've played through Root Letter already, which might not be very many of you, because according to my PSN profiles, I'm like the one person who's actually gone to the end of this game. So yeah, that's a bit weird. But if you have played through the game already, you'll know what I mean when I say gag reels, mate. If you do run into one of those right away, it can be a little bit weird. And, well, I guess the one neat thing about all the different endings is that it justifies all the things that happened in the story beforehand in a really neat way, which is that's kind of an accomplishment, really. When you've got multiple endings, and you can justify all of them by filling in the blanks that the main story leaves, that's pretty cool. And you know, just the whole atmosphere of it, all the characters you meet, all the places you go to and all that. It's all nice, and the gameplay itself is simple but engaging, and it's not so hard as to make you want to tear your hair out or anything like that. You can work everything out just purely by, you know, working through it, using logic and stuff like that. So it's a fine game. It just doesn't do anything that really sticks out. But what they have done is made a perfectly competent visual novel, I think is what I'm trying to say here. They've made a competent visual novel with a couple of weird things going on here and there, but it's perfectly fine the way it is. Obviously, it doesn't... I mean, if I was to stack it up against games like Danganronpa or Steins Gate or Zero Escape, and I need to talk about Steins Gate Zero because I finished Steins Gate a little while back, and I absolutely adored it, and I'm amazed that it took me over a year to get to it after it came out on Vita, other than, you know, playing it for 10 minutes to get that gameplay video up, which I did, which was a pretty bad idea now that I think about it. But yeah, if you stack it up against games like Danganronpa, Zero Escape, and Steins Gate, it doesn't really compare to them very well, but at the same time, it's perfectly competent as it is, and I just wish it was a bit longer, because, I mean, considering that the game's got, like, it's, as I said, it's 6 to 7 hours to finish the game the first time. It's a bit short, and then you have to get through all the other stuff. There is some bonus stuff hanging off the side, like there's a bunch of special challenges you can do inside the main storyline. They'll get your stuff unlocked in the gallery and stuff like that. But other than that, it's okay. It's fine. It's enjoyable. I don't regret playing through all of it. I'll probably feel a lot better about it when I get some sleep, because I was up until like 3 o'clock in the morning yesterday trying to finish it so I could actually talk about it for this video. But yeah, it's fine. I wouldn't recommend it outright unless you're a visual novel fan already, or maybe wait for it to go on sale, because $40 feels a little bit expensive for it. But at the same time, it's perfectly fine as it is. And you know, if you like this sort of thing, if you liked say Steins Gate, and you wanted something just a little bit more down to earth and realistic and, well, Japanesey, because it is very Japanesey, then it's not hard to say you'll probably like it. So yeah. Not an outright recommend, but if you like visual novels and you want a well-crafted, if not particularly exceptional one, this is probably a decent place to go. This has been Blue Maxima, and I'll see you all next time.